The champagne glass shattered before Claire Bennett hit the floor. For one suspended second, the ballroom of the Sterling Crown Hotel seemed to freeze around her. Crystal chandeliers burned above 600 guests. A string quartet held one unfinished note. Silver trays gleamed beneath soft gold light. Then the expensive champagne spread across the white silk gown of Victoria Vale. And laughter began to move through the room. It started near the table of young heirs beside the dance floor. A sharp little sound. Then another. Soon the laughter traveled from table to table, polished and cruel, until Claire could feel it pressing against her skin. Victoria looked down at the stain on her dress as if Claire had thrown acid. "You clumsy cow," Victoria said. Claire pushed herself upright. Pain burned through one knee where it had struck the marble. She knew exactly what had happened. Victoria had extended one jeweled foot into her path, waited for the tray to tilt, then stepped back with perfect innocence. Claire had seen the smile before the fall. "I am sorry your dress was damaged," Claire said, "but you tripped me." The laughter died into shocked whispers. Victoria lifted her chin. "You are calling me a liar." Before Claire could answer, Harold Mercer, the banquet manager, hurried across the ballroom. He was a narrow man with nervous eyes and a talent for becoming brave only when someone beneath him could not fight back. He seized Claire by the arm. "Apologize," he whispered. "I already did." "Not like that." Mercer glanced toward Adrian Vale, the billionaire host of the charity gala. The father of Victoria watched with a thin smile from the head table. Beside him sat senators, judges, shipping magnates, and men whose fortunes had been built behind doors no journalist could open. Mercer tightened his grip. "Get on your knees," he said. "Beg her forgiveness, or you are finished in every hotel in the city." Heat rushed through the face of Claire. She could hear phones being lifted. She could see people recording her. Somewhere behind her, a waiter she had trained began to move forward. But Claire shook her head once. She would not let someone else lose a job for her. Across the ballroom, a chair moved. The sound was quiet, wood against marble. Yet it silenced the room more completely than a gunshot. Luca Moretti rose from the table near the windows. He had ignored the dancers, the cameras, the heiresses who had crossed the room for no reason except to pass near him. He had spent the evening in a black suit, one hand resting beside an untouched glass of wine. His expression calm enough to frighten every person who understood what calm meant in a man like him. Everyone in Chicago knew the name Moretti. Some knew it from old newspaper photographs. Some knew it from whispered stories about unions, ports, judges, and men who disappeared after choosing the wrong side of a debt. Others knew only that Luca entered through private doors, never stood in line, and was never asked to explain why armed men followed him. Claire knew one other thing. 10 minutes earlier, she had stopped one of those men from drinking a poisoned glass. She had noticed that the foil around one bottle had been cut and pressed back into place. She had smelled something sharp beneath the wine when she passed the table. She had seen a server she did not recognize replace the glass beside Luca, then disappear through a service corridor. Claire had leaned close to the broad-shouldered man seated at the right hand of Luca. "Do not drink that," she had whispered. The bottle was open before it reached the room. The man had stared at her. Luca had stared longer. Now Luca walked toward her. No one laughed. His bodyguards moved away from the walls. The ballroom doors closed. The quartet lowered their instruments. Even Victoria seemed to forget the stain on her dress. Luca stopped in front of Mercer. "Remove your hand," he said. Mercer released Claire so quickly that his fingers shook. "Mr. Moretti, this is a hotel matter." Luca looked at him. Mercer swallowed the rest of the sentence. Luca removed his jacket. The movement was slow, almost formal. He placed it around the shoulders of Claire, covering the champagne that had soaked through the front of her uniform. The jacket was warm. It smelled faintly of cedar, winter air, and something darker that Claire could not name. Luca looked at Victoria. "Did you trip her?" Victoria gave a brittle laugh. "Of course not." Luca turned his eyes to Claire. "Did she trip you?" "Yes." No hesitation. No apology. Something changed in his expression. Not softness. Luca Moretti did not have a soft face. It was recognition. Perhaps. The moment one dangerous person understood that another person would not bow simply because fear had entered the room. He looked back at Mercer. "She will not kneel for anyone." Mercer tried to smile. "Naturally, we can handle this privately. You already handled it publicly." The words were quiet. That made them worse. Luca turned toward the ballroom. "Every person who laughed will leave," he said. "Every person who recorded her will delete the recording before leaving. Anyone who refuses may explain the decision to me." Hundreds of faces went pale. Adrian Vale rose from the head table. "This is my event." Luca looked at him. "Not anymore." At that moment, a bodyguard crossed the room and whispered into the ear of Luca. The calm in Luca did not break, but the air around him changed. The server who switched the wine was gone. Claire looked toward the service corridor. In the mirrored panel beside the kitchen doors, she caught a flash of movement. A man in a white service coat stepped into the dark hall. A silver cufflink gleamed at his wrist. It was shaped like a coiled serpent. "That is him," Claire said. The man looked back. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Then he ran. Luca moved before anyone else. He pulled Claire behind him as two bodyguards rushed toward the corridor. A second later, a shot cracked beyond the kitchen doors. Guests screamed. Chairs overturned. The chandeliers continued to glow above the sudden panic. Luca did not duck. He stood between Claire and the sound, one arm extended across her body. His white shirt bright against the black room. "Stay behind me," he said. Claire should have been terrified of him. Instead, with the whole ballroom collapsing into chaos, she felt safer behind Luca Moretti than she had felt among 600 respectable people. That realization frightened her most of all. The gunman escaped through the loading dock. Within minutes, black vehicles surrounded the hotel. Police sirens screamed along Michigan Avenue. But the first men into the ballroom did not wear uniforms. They wore dark coats and carried themselves with the cold efficiency of soldiers who answered to one voice. Luca remained beside Claire, while his people searched every floor. Mercer had vanished. Victoria and her father were escorted into a private office. The guests were searched, questioned, and released one group at a time. No one protested. Public power belonged to people like Adrian Vale. Private power belonged to men who could make a ballroom full of powerful people forget how to speak. Claire folded the jacket tighter around herself. "I need to leave," she said. No, that was not an answer she was accustomed to accepting. "I have a home. You were seen identifying the man who tried to kill me. He tried to poison your friend. He placed the glass beside me." Claire looked toward the table by the windows. The poisoned wine still rested under guard, untouched and innocent beneath the chandelier light. Luca studied her face. "You noticed the seal on the bottle?" "Yes." "No one else did. No one else serving that table had worked in catering for 12 years. His gaze dropped to the name tag pinned to her uniform. Claire Bennett. The way he said her name made her look up. "You know me, I know the name." A warning moved through her, quiet and immediate. Before she could ask what he meant, the broad-shouldered bodyguard she had warned approached them. His name, she learned, was Dante Russo. He carried a tablet in one hand and a pistol beneath his coat. The loading dock camera was cut, Dante said. The vehicle had false plates. We found the service coat and no weapon. And Mercer gone, Dante said. Luca looked at Claire. You are coming with me. I am not one of your employees. No. My employees follow instructions faster. Her eyes narrowed. For the first time that evening, something almost human touched the mouth of Luca. It was not a smile. It was the memory of one. Then Dante held out a phone. The screen showed a photograph taken less than 2 minutes earlier. Claire stood in the ballroom, wearing the jacket of Luca, while he faced the crowd. The image had already spread across social media. The caption claimed that the mysterious woman beside the Moretti crime lord had exposed an assassination attempt. Below it were comments. Her hotel name. Her neighborhood. A photograph of her apartment building. The blood left her face. Luca saw it. Your normal life ended when you pointed at him. He said, I can protect you while we find out who sent him. Or you can walk into the street and hope they are slower than you. Claire hated the choice because it was not a choice. She looked at the closed doors, the armed men, and the laughing guests now desperate to escape the consequences of what they had witnessed. Then she looked at Luca. How long? Until you are no longer useful to my enemies. That answer should have warned her. Instead, she gave him a single nod. The black vehicles left the hotel in a tight formation. Rain struck the windows as they moved north through Chicago. Claire sat in the back of the center vehicle beside Luca, his jacket still around her, while Dante drove and another guard watched the streets behind them. The city passed in silver reflections, wet traffic lights, empty bus stops, towers disappearing into fog near the lake. Claire kept her hands folded to hide the shaking. Luca noticed anyway. Are you injured? Only my pride. Pride heals slowly. You would know. His eyes turned toward her. Most people would have apologized for the question. Claire did not. He answered after a moment. Yes. The simplicity unsettled her more than anger would have. They entered an underground garage beneath a glass tower on the river. Armed guards opened steel gates. The elevator required a palm scan, a key, and a code before it rose toward the top floors. Claire watched the numbers climb. This is not witness protection, she said. No, this is kidnapping with expensive furniture. The almost smile returned and vanished. You may leave whenever you choose. She looked at the armed men inside the elevator. How generous. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Dark wood, pale stone, walls of glass, and the cold glitter of Chicago below. It was beautiful in the way a museum could be beautiful after closing. Perfect and untouched, with no sign that anyone lived there except a black coat left over, one chair and a book resting open beside the fireplace. Luca led Claire to a guest suite. There were fresh clothes in several sizes, a private bathroom, and a view of the river cutting through the city like black glass. Claire stopped beside the bed. You prepared this before tonight. Luca said nothing. The clothes were not random. They were her size. She turned slowly. How did you know what would fit me? His face remained calm. My staff is thorough. That is not an answer. It is the only one you will receive tonight. He started toward the door. Claire pulled his jacket from her shoulders and held it out. Luca looked at it, then at her. Keep it. I do not want to owe you anything. You already saved my life. I saved a man from drinking bad wine. The glass was meant for me. Silence settled between them. Claire lowered the jacket. Why were you watching me before that happened? His eyes became unreadable. Sleep. Claire. Then he left, locking nothing behind him. That should have made her feel free. It did not. Claire did not sleep. At 2 in the morning, fear for the apartment, holding her father's recipe book and business plans, drove her from the guest room. Claire followed the smell of coffee and found Luca alone in the kitchen before a wall of security screens. One screen showed the street outside her apartment. Claire stopped. You have cameras outside my home. Tonight. Yes. Only tonight. Luca turned off the screen. Your building was empty when my men arrived. Someone had entered your apartment and searched it. Fear moved through her chest. What did they take? Nothing obvious. Then they were looking for something. Yes. She crossed her arms, holding herself together. What do you think I have? That depends on what your father left you. The room seemed to narrow. My father disappeared when I was 14. I know. How Luca poured coffee into a second cup. He pushed it across the marble counter. But Claire did not touch it. Thomas Bennett kept financial records for my father. Luca said, he vanished the same week my parents were murdered. The words landed without sound. Claire stared at him. Her father had been an accountant. That was what her mother had always said. He worked long hours. He traveled. He had secrets. But they had seemed ordinary then. A locked desk. Phone calls taken on the balcony. Envelopes hidden beneath winter coats. You think he killed them. I think he knew who did. And you have been watching me because of him. For 6 weeks. At least he did not insult her with another lie. Claire felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the ruined uniform or the cameras in the ballroom. 6 weeks meant grocery stores, late shifts, bus stops, evenings spent at her kitchen table, calculating the cost of ovens she could not afford. What did you see? Luca did not answer. What did you see? Luca. The use of his first name sharpened the silence. I saw you work 2 jobs, he said. I saw you send money to the woman who raised you after your mother died. I saw you visit empty restaurant spaces and pretend you were only reading the signs. I saw you sit outside one of those spaces for 40 minutes after the bank rejected your loan. Claire turned away before he could see how deeply the last sentence cut. So I was not a woman to you. I was a locked box. At first, she faced him again. And now, his eyes held hers. Now you are the reason an assassin failed. It was not the answer she wanted. It was safer because it hurt. Claire finally reached for the coffee. The cup was warm between her hands. My father left one thing, she said. A recipe book. It belonged to my grandmother. I have had it for years. Did anyone know? My mother. My aunt. No one else. Luca lifted his phone. Bring the book, he told Dante. Claire set down the cup. You do not get to order people into my home and take my property. Someone already entered your home. The next person may burn it. Then I am going with them. No. She walked closer until only the marble counter stood between them. You keep saying I can leave. Prove it. A muscle shifted in his jaw. The streets are not secure. Then make them secure. Is that not what men like you do? The words hung between them. Luca looked angry for the first time. Not because she had challenged his power. Claire realized, but because part of him respected the challenge. We leave in 10 minutes, he said. Before dawn. The convoy reached her apartment. The lock had been opened cleanly, and every room had been searched. Claire went directly to the kitchen cabinet above the refrigerator. The recipe book was gone. She stood on a chair and searched the shelf twice. Although she knew exactly where it had been. Someone took it, she whispered. Luca entered behind her. His people spread through the rooms. Dante found a camera no larger than a shirt button hidden inside the smoke detector. That is not ours, Dante said. Claire looked at Luca. Not ours. The word did not comfort her. She stepped down from the chair, then noticed a line of flour across the floor. The intruder had knocked over a paper bag from the cabinet. A faint shoe print crossed the white dust toward the wall. Claire crouched. Her father had taught her to notice kitchens. Not merely recipes. Heat marks. Loose hinges. The sound of a refrigerator motor beginning to fail. He had told her that a kitchen revealed the truth about a house because people forgot to lie there. The shoe print stopped beside the baseboard. Claire pressed the wood. A narrow panel opened. Inside lay a brass key wrapped in wax paper and a photograph faded at the edges. The photograph showed her father standing beside a much younger Luca outside a church. Luca could not have been more than 16. Beside him stood a broad, smiling man Claire recognized from the newspapers as the late Vittorio Moretti. Behind them stood Gabriel Rizzo. He looked younger. But the calm eyes were the same eyes that appeared beside Luca in every recent photograph. Trusted advisor. Family friend. The man said to have raised Luca after the murder of his parents. On the back of the photograph, her father had written 5 words. Trust the son, not the guardian. Luca read the message over her shoulder. His face went still. Who was the guardian? Claire asked, although she already knew. Luca took the photograph. Gabrielle. Dante cursed under his breath. Luca looked at the brass key in the hand of Claire. We are leaving now. The first bullet struck the kitchen window. Glass burst across the room. Luca pulled Claire to the floor and covered her with his body as more shots hit the brick outside. His men returned fire from the hallway. The sound filled the small apartment. Brutal and deafening. Claire pressed one hand against the floor. The other gripped the brass key so tightly that its teeth cut into her palm. Luca was above her. One arm around her head, his weight shielding her from the shattered glass. Look at me, he said. She forced her eyes open. Not the window. Me. Another shot struck the wall. His face remained calm. His eyes did not. For the first time, Claire saw fear in Luca Moretti. It was not fear for himself. Dante shouted that the rear stairwell was clear. Luca lifted Claire into his arms before she could object. He carried her through the apartment, down the back stairs, and into the rain. Black vehicles filled the alley. Armed men formed a wall around them. Luca placed Claire inside one vehicle and climbed in after her as bullets sparked against the metal door. The convoy tore away from the building. Only when they reached Lower Wacker Drive did Luca release her. Claire looked down at her hand. Blood lined the small cuts where the key had pressed into her skin. Luca took her wrist. His touch was controlled, but his breathing was not. It is nothing, she said. You were bleeding. So were your knuckles. That was different. Because it was your blood. Because I chose it. He wrapped a clean handkerchief around her palm. His fingers were steady. His thumb hovered once over the center of her hand, almost touching skin, then stopped. Claire watched that unfinished movement. Why did my father tell me to trust you? Luca tied the cloth. Perhaps he did not know me well. That was the first time she heard bitterness beneath his control. The brass key opened a private deposit box inside an old bank near the river. The bank had been closed for years, but the Moretti family owned the building through 3 companies and a charitable foundation. Before visiting the bank, Luca moved Claire to a guarded house beside the lake. Snow covered the shoreline by night. After a doctor treated her hand, Claire found the kitchen and made fresh pasta because cooking returned control to her hands. Luca entered when she was shaping the dough. You should be resting. You should stop telling me what to do. He removed his coat and placed it over a chair. That has never worked well for anyone else. Perhaps no one else made fresh pasta while saying it. He watched her for a moment. There was flour on her cheek. Claire did not know until his hand lifted. His fingers stopped an inch from her skin. The kitchen became very quiet. Luca lowered his hand. You have flour on your face, he said. Claire wiped the wrong cheek. The other side. She wiped again. Still missing it. Something close to amusement entered his eyes. You could simply help me. His gaze held hers. I do not touch what I cannot afford to want. The words moved through her more slowly than fear. Before she could answer, Dante entered. Gabriel is here, he said. The moment vanished. Gabriel Rizzo came into the kitchen with snow on his shoulders and concern arranged perfectly across his face. He was in his early 60s. Elegant, silver-haired, and gentle in the way some knives were beautiful. He embraced Luca like a father. Then he looked at Claire. So this is the brave young woman who saved him. Claire felt Luca become still beside her. Gabriel took her uninjured hand. Your father was a good man, he said. Claire did not pull away. You knew him very well. Did you know he left me a key? Gabriel smiled. No. It was perfect. Warm. Surprised. Convincing. Only his eyes changed. Claire saw it because she had spent years watching wealthy guests pretend to respect the people who served them. Gabriel looked at the handkerchief around her other palm. What happened? Someone shot through her kitchen window. Luca said. Gabriel turned to him. Then the enemy knows she found something. Or the enemy was watching the apartment. Claire said. Gabriel looked back at her. Very observant. Claire smiled without warmth. People say that when they wish I were less observant. For a heartbeat. The kitchen seemed colder. Then Gabriel laughed. Luca did not. After dinner, Gabriel asked to speak with Luca privately. Claire watched them enter the library and close the door. Dante remained near the hall. Do you trust him? Claire asked. Dante looked toward the library. Luca does. That is not what I asked. Dante considered her. Gabriel carried Luca out of the church after the parents of Luca were killed. He taught him how to survive. Trust is not always built from truth. Sometimes it is built from debt. Claire looked down at the photograph her father had left. And debt can make intelligent men blind. Dante did not answer. Later, Luca found Claire standing at the window of her room. Snow moved over the dark lake. His reflection appeared behind her in the glass. Gabriel says the key may open a box used by my father. Do you believe him? I believe he knows more than he said. Claire turned. Then why is he still here? Because suspicion is not proof. And because he raised you, Luca looked toward the snow. Family is often the first weapon used against a man. Claire heard the truth beneath the sentence. She softened despite herself. My mother waited for my father for 11 years. She said. Every time the phone rang. She believed it might be him. When she became ill, she still kept his side of the closet empty. Loyalty can become a room we refuse to leave. Even after the house burns down. Luca looked at her. You left. No. My mother died. The room disappeared around me. The distance between them seemed smaller. Luca lifted his hand toward her face again. This time, his fingers touched one loose strand of hair near her cheek. The contact was almost nothing. Yet Claire felt it everywhere. A phone rang in the hall. He dropped his hand. Dante entered without knocking. The story from the gala has changed, he said. The press is calling Claire your mistress. Vale is claiming she staged the poisoning to gain access to you. The hotel has fired her for misconduct. Claire closed her eyes. The job had been ugly, but it had paid rent. It had paid medical bills. It had built the small savings account that carried the name Bennett Catering. Luca took the phone from Dante and read the article. By morning, no hotel in Chicago would hire the woman accused of seducing a crime lord and destroying a charity gala. Claire opened her eyes. I will make a statement. They will cut it into pieces. Then I will sue. Vale owns 3 newspapers and half the board of the hotel. I am not hiding here while they bury me. Luca studied her, then turned to Dante. Arrange a press conference. Claire stared at him. What are you doing? Giving them a story they cannot control. The next afternoon, black vehicles stopped outside the Sterling Crown Hotel. Reporters packed the entrance beneath falling snow. Cameras turned as Luca stepped from the first vehicle. Then Claire stepped out beside him. She wore a dark green dress selected by no stylist. It was one she had bought 2 years earlier for the opening day of the catering business she had not yet built. It fit the curves that Victoria had mocked and made no apology for them. Luca offered his hand. Claire looked at it. What story are we giving them? His voice was low enough for only her to hear. That anyone who attacks you attacks me. That sounds like a threat. Not a story. For me, they are the same thing. She placed her hand in his. Cameras exploded with light. On the steps of the hotel, Luca faced the press and announced that Claire Bennett was under his personal protection. When a reporter shouted that she was only a waitress, Luca turned his eyes toward him. She is the woman who saved my life while everyone else watched. He said, choose your next word carefully. Another reporter asked whether Claire was his lover. Luca looked at Claire. She saw the decision before he spoke. She is my future wife, he said. The city went silent for half a second. Then it erupted. Inside the vehicle, Claire pulled her hand from his. Future wife Luca closed the door as reporters crowded the glass. They wanted a scandal. I gave them a boundary. You gave them my life. Your life was already exposed. That does not make it yours to rewrite. His expression hardened. The announcement makes you politically expensive to harm. Vale cannot attack you without appearing to attack me. Rival families will assume you are guarded as closely as I am. And what do I receive, besides armed strangers and wedding rumors? Time. Claire looked out at the cameras. How romantic. I did not claim it was romantic. The answer hurt more than it should have. For 3 days, Chicago debated the body, job, and motives of Claire. When she asked why people spoke as if she had won Luca in a contest, he said they believed powerful men chose women like objects. Do you? She asked. Once. And now, I know objects do not argue this much. Her quiet laugh eased something in him. That evening, he brought her to the abandoned bank. The building stood in the financial district behind carved stone columns blackened by winter. Dante and 6 guards secured the street. Luca led Claire through a silent lobby, down 2 flights of stairs, and into a vault lined with steel boxes. The brass key opened box 217. Inside were 3 ledgers, a cassette tape, and a sealed letter addressed to Claire. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The writing belonged to her father. He explained that he had discovered Gabriel Rizzo moving money through companies controlled by rival families. Gabriel had arranged the murder of Vittorio Moretti and his wife, then blamed a rival syndicate to push the young Luca into a war Gabriel could control. Thomas Bennett stole the records and ran, believing that Gabriel would kill Claire and her mother if he surrendered. The final lines were harder to read. He had planned to return. He had been captured before he could. He believed Gabriel would never stop searching for the evidence. He asked Claire to forgive a father who had chosen distance because every road home carried danger behind him. Claire lowered the letter. For 20 years, she had believed he had abandoned them. Luca stood beside her. It's silent. Did you know he died? She asked. No. Did you look for him? For years. To punish him. At first, she closed her eyes. Luca took the cassette and found an old recorder stored in a cabinet. The voice of Thomas Bennett filled the vault. Tired and urgent. He named accounts, dates, officers, and politicians. Then he described seeing Gabriel at the church on the night the parents of Luca were murdered. A second voice interrupted the recording. Gabrielle, you should have left the books alone. Thomas. The tape ended with a struggle and silence. Luca did not move. Claire watched the man beside her become something colder than grief. I trusted him, Luca said. The words were almost inaudible. Claire touched his arm. His body went rigid beneath her hand. Then the vault lights died. Gunfire sounded in the lobby above. Dante shouted through the radio. Luca pulled Claire behind the steel door as emergency lights turned the vault red. A smoke canister rolled down the stairs. Luca covered the mouth of Claire with a cloth and guided her through a rear passage. They emerged into an underground tunnel once used to move cash between buildings. Halfway through the darkness, a man stepped from behind a pillar. Luca fired first. The man fell without a sound. Claire froze. Luca turned her face away from the body. "Keep moving." She looked at the gun in his hand, then at his eyes. This was the part of him polite society whispered about. Not the tailored suits or private elevators. The speed, the certainty, the absence of hesitation when danger reached for what he considered his. Claire was afraid of him. She trusted him anyway. At the end of the tunnel, Dante waited beside an armored vehicle. Blood darkened one sleeve, but he remained standing. Gabriel knew about the box, Dante said. He was waiting for us to open it. Luca placed Claire inside. "Take her to the penthouse." "Where are you going?" Claire asked. "To end this." "No." The single word stopped him. Luca looked back. Claire held the letter of her father against her chest. "You do not get to lock me away while you decide what this truth means. Gabriel killed my father too. That is why you will stay alive. And if you do not come back," his face changed. For one unguarded moment. The feared man in front of her looked like the 16-year-old in the photograph, standing outside a church without knowing that everyone he loved was about to disappear. Luca stepped closer. His hand rose to her cheek. This time, he did not stop. His palm was warm against her skin. "I will come back," he said. "You cannot promise that." "No, but I can promise that no one reaches you before they pass through me." The words were not tender. They were darker than tenderness and far more honest. He leaned forward until his forehead touched hers. Then Dante received a call. The safe house on the lake had been attacked. The guards there were alive. But the message was clear. Gabriel knew every Moretti property, every security route, and every code Luca had trusted him to build. Luca withdrew. "The penthouse is compromised," he said. "We go to the club." The Moretti leaders gathered beneath an old theater in the West Loop. Claire entered beside Luca, wearing his black coat, and every conversation stopped. Gabriel had spent decades earning loyalty there. Luca had one night to break it. He placed the ledgers on the table and played the recording. Some men looked sick, others looked angry. One reached beneath his jacket. Claire saw the movement reflected in a silver wine bucket. "Luca," she shouted. The man fired. Luca pushed Claire down as the room exploded into violence. Dante returned fire. Lights shattered. Men overturned the table and drew weapons. Claire crawled behind a stone column. Through smoke and flashing red light, she saw Luca move toward the traitors rather than away from them. He was terrifying. He was also bleeding from a cut above one eye. And every time he fired, he looked back to find her. When the last traitor dropped his weapon, Luca crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Claire against him. "Are you hurt?" "No." He checked her arms, her face, her shoulders, as if her answer could not be trusted. "I am fine," she said. His hands remained around her. The room was full of men, smoke, broken glass, and bodies being dragged away. Luca seemed unaware of all of it. "I nearly lost you," he said. Claire felt the truth in the grip of his fingers. "No," she whispered. "You nearly admitted you care." His eyes met hers. He kissed her. It was not gentle, but it was restrained by the effort not to frighten her. For one breath, he held all his violence outside the circle of his arms. Claire felt the control in him, the fear beneath it, and the loneliness he had hidden behind power for half his life. She kissed him back. Then a screen on the far wall turned on. Gabriel appeared from an unknown location. He was smiling. "The police will receive copies of every ledger before dawn," he said. "Not merely my accounts. Yours as well. Luca. Judges. Union. Ports. By sunrise. Your empire will be tearing itself apart." Luca stepped in front of Claire. Gabriel continued, "Bring me the original tape and the girl. I will give you the names of every man who helped kill your parents." Claire felt Luca become still. There it was. The final weapon, not money, not prison. The unanswered grief of a boy outside a church. The screen went dark. Luca ordered the room cleared. When Claire reached for him, he stepped away. "You should rest." "Do not do that." "Do what? Turn into stone because I saw you feel something?" His eyes were cold again. "Feeling something does not change what I am." "No, but it changes what you might choose." He said nothing. Claire left the room before he could see how much his silence hurt. A guard escorted her to a private office upstairs. On the desk sat a laptop connected to the internal security system. Claire opened it, searching for a map of the building. Instead, she found a folder bearing her name. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Claire leaving work. Claire carrying groceries. Claire standing outside empty restaurant spaces. Claire asleep beside the window of a late bus. Claire laughing with a cook behind the hotel. Claire crying alone in her car after the bank rejected her loan. Some images had notes beneath them. Habits, friends, debts, medical history, daily routes. At the bottom was a report signed by Luca 6 weeks earlier. Potential access, point to Bennett evidence. Montaigne surveillance. Do not contact until asset is confirmed. Asset. The word destroyed what the kiss had begun. Claire heard the door behind her. Luca stood there. His gaze moved to the screen. "How much of me was real to you?" she asked. "All of it became real." Became. Claire closed the laptop. "You watched me break in private. You knew what I wanted. You knew where I was weak. Then you brought clothes in my size and pretended it was protection. At first, I believed you might lead me to the records. And when did I stop being an asset?" Luca looked at her as if the answer frightened him. "When you stood in a ballroom full of people who despised you and told the truth anyway. That was before you brought me home." "Yes. Then why did you not tell me? Because I knew you would leave." Claire swallowed. "That is not protection. That is control." "I know." The admission came without defense. She had expected denial. Anger. Command. His honesty left her with nowhere to place her pain. Claire removed the ring Luca had given her for the public engagement and set it on the desk. "I will not be kept by a man who studies my cage and calls it love." Luca looked at the ring. "I never called it love." "No. You were too afraid." She walked past him. He did not stop her. That was his first act of devotion. It nearly killed her. Claire made it only as far as the underground garage. The driver waiting beside the vehicle wore a Moretti pin. Dante was still downstairs. The man opened the rear door and lowered his eyes respectfully. Claire noticed the silver cuff link beneath his sleeve, a coiled serpent. She turned to run. A cloth covered her mouth. The garage tilted into darkness. When she woke, she was lying beside the altar of an abandoned church. Snow fell through holes in the roof. Candles burned along the aisle, their flames bending in the winter wind. Gabriel stood beneath the broken figure of an angel. Mercer waited near the door with a gun, his face pale and eager. Gabriel smiled. "Your father chose this place for his final mistake," he said. Claire forced herself upright. "Luca will find me." Of course. Men like Luca always find the thing they believe belongs to them. "I do not belong to him." "That may be why he loves you." The word struck harder because Luca had never said it. Gabriel held up the phone of Claire. He had sent Luca a photograph and an address. He will bring the tape, Gabriel said. Then he will die where his parents died. Claire looked around the church. 2 armed men in the balcony. Mercer, near the door. Gabriel at the altar. A dark shape moved behind a shattered window on the opposite wall. A hidden shooter. She memorized every position. The church doors open. Luca entered alone. Snow covered his black coat. Blood marked the collar of his white shirt. But his hands were empty. He carried the cassette tape in one palm. His eyes found Claire. Nothing else in the church seemed to exist. Are you hurt? He asked. No. Gabriel laughed softly. Still asking the wrong question. You should ask whether she hates you. Luca kept his gaze on Claire. She has the right. The answer silenced Gabriel. Luca placed the tape on the center aisle. Let her go. Gabriel lifted his gun. You would trade 20 years of vengeance for a waitress. Luca looked at the woman beside the altar. No, he said. I would trade everything for Claire. He kicked the tape toward Gabriel. Mercer moved to collect it. Claire saw the hidden shooter raise a rifle behind the broken window. Luca left. Luca turned as the shot shattered stone beside him. He drew a weapon from behind his back. The church erupted. Claire threw herself behind the altar. Luca fired toward the window, then crossed the aisle under falling glass. Mercer grabbed Claire by the hair and dragged her upright. She drove her heel into his foot, twisted free, and struck his wrist against the altar until the gun fell. Gabriel aimed at her. Luca stepped between them. The shot hit his shoulder. He staggered but did not fall. Claire screamed his name. Dante and the Moretti men burst through the side doors. The balcony shooters dropped their weapons. Gabriel backed toward the altar, rage breaking through his elegant calm. You were nothing before me, he told Luca. I made you. Luca pressed one hand to his shoulder. You made me afraid to love anyone. Gabriel raised the gun again. Luca fired once. Gabriel fell beneath the broken angel. For a moment, no one moved. Then Luca turned to Claire. His weapon slipped from his hand. She reached him before he reached the floor. Snow moved through the ruined roof. Settling in his dark hair, Claire pressed both hands against his shoulder while Dante called for the doctor. Luca looked up at her. I am sorry, he said. Save your strength. I watched you because I wanted answers. I kept watching because you became the only honest thing in my life. Tears blurred her vision. That is a terrible confession. It is the only one I have. She bent close, her forehead against his, then survived long enough to make a better one. He did. 3 months later, Claire opened Bennett House Catering in a renovated brick kitchen near the river. She paid for it with her savings, insurance from the hotel settlement, and a legitimate business loan approved after the evidence cleared the name of her father. Luca offered money once. Claire refused once. He never offered again. Instead, he came to tastings. He carried boxes when no one was watching. He sat through discussions about linen costs with the same attention he once gave war plans. He removed every hidden file on her life and gave her the only copy before destroying the rest. The fake engagement ended publicly, and their real relationship began privately. On opening night, Bennett House catered a winter charity dinner in the restored Sterling Crown Ballroom. Mercer faced prison, and Adrian Vale had lost the hotel after records exposed his partnership with Gabriel. Claire stood beneath the same chandeliers where she had once been ordered to kneel. This time, she wore a deep green gown and directed a team that called her by name. A nervous young waitress stumbled near the head table. One glass tipped, spilling water across the sleeve of an angry guest. The guest rose. Before he could speak, Luca rose from his chair. The ballroom fell silent from memory. Claire crossed the floor and placed a reassuring hand on the shoulder of the waitress. "It was an accident," she said. "No one kneels in my company." The guest sat down. Luca remained standing, watching Claire with pride that he no longer tried to hide. Later, on the empty hotel roof, snow drifted over Chicago. Luca gave Claire the ring from the false engagement. She looked at it in his palm. "We already tried this." "That ring was a shield," he said. "This time it is a question." Claire studied the man before her. He was still feared, still dangerous, still capable of turning a room silent with one look. Love had not made him harmless. It had made him honest. "Will there be cameras?" she asked. "Only the ones you approve." "Will there be orders? Requests?" Poorly phrased. "Perhaps." She smiled. "And if I say no, I will spend the rest of my life proving that you are free to change your mind." Claire took the ring. "Yes," she said. For the first time, Luca Moretti looked unguarded beneath the winter sky. He kissed her as snow covered the city. Not like a man claiming something he owned, but like a man receiving what power had never been able to buy. Below them, the ballroom lights burned gold. The room that had once laughed when Claire fell now carried the name of her company across every table. And when Luca rose from his chair for her again, it was not because she needed a savior. It was because the most feared man in Chicago had finally learned how to stand beside the woman he loved.